You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Hey there, you're listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. So today's episode is special. I want to continue kind of what we were talking about the last couple weeks about tiers without tears. And I want to share with you guys a clip from my recent training that I did. Now, this is part of Impact. That's my membership for school counselors. I do monthly professional development for them. So it'll kind of give you a taste if you're curious about what Impact is or what the PD is like inside. You can check out the training here. So I'm going to be sharing a clip. I'm not going to share the full training, but it's just a little clip talking about how you can schedule, plan, and deliver engaging class lessons, small groups, and individual curriculum. So I think you're going to love it. It has a lot of hands-on takeaways that you guys can take away and use tomorrow. Like I said, it is a recording, so you may notice like giveaways going down and crowd interaction and stuff, but I think it's more fun that way. So I hope you love it, and let's go ahead and dive into today's episode. Let's play a little game of Would You Rather, School Counselor Edition. Okay, would you rather spend your weekend planning a group or spend your afternoon sitting in irrelevant PD? Yikes. Or would you rather be the only counselor with no one to collaborate with, or to spend hours searching online for engaging activities? All of these options are pretty bad, right? But unfortunately, they're all too real. But what if I told you I had a solution for you? What if I told you I had access to hundreds of school counseling lessons, groups, and activities, counselor-specific trainings on the topics you need most, and a community of like-minded school counselors to support you? You would say, yes, please. Well, that is what Impact is all about. Impact is my monthly membership for school counselors, and it helps you with all of these things. You get access to hundreds of resources. That's unlimited free downloads. Log in and get what you need right away to every single resource that's in my store. We add new resources each and every month. We're adding a new middle school and elementary resource each month, and some of these are bonus Impact exclusives, meaning that you can get resources just for members. You can request resources that you need and easily search so you can find exactly what you're looking for. And let's talk about the trainings, counselor-specific trainings on the topics you need most. We do these each and every month as part of our Coffee with the Counselor series. Impact members get to join for absolutely free. You earn PD certificates and you get exclusive access to members-only things like the Ultimate Small Group Experience and our Summer Summit Conference. And the community. Y'all, this is possibly my favorite part of Impact. I so look forward to jumping on these calls, to getting to know counselors who are similar to me and also completely different. It's so fun to hear from your experiences and your challenges, and everyone brings a unique perspective to the table. We have an exclusive online community, and we even have a cool app where you can chat with other counselors in these community circles. We have our monthly calls, like I mentioned, twice a month, and we share wins, troubleshoot tough cases, and just talk about what it's like to be a counselor, because so often we're on our own island at our school sites. So if any of that sounds like it's for you, I would love to see you inside Impact. Go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact to solve all of your counselor problems. And I have a special offer for my listeners. Use code POD at checkout to save 10% off your first month. Okay, let's go to today's episode. How to thrive instead of survive this semester? Well, first, let's talk about exactly what you should be doing at each tier. And that's organizing, setting up, and delivering class lessons, small groups, and individual sessions. And you're probably thinking, oh, just that? Sounds like a lot. Well, let's talk about the tiers. So what are the 3 tiers? Counselors are supposed to use layered interventions. So I love this image I found on Instagram a long time ago from 2 Blondes Counseling. I want to credit them for that. But I love the way that it shows that they're layered interventions. So Tier 1, these are supports that all students are getting. Those are going to be your preventative class lessons. Tier 2 are for some, they're referral-based small groups for higher needs students. And then Tier 3, these are going to be your highest need students, like a select group of students who are referral-based that you're seeing in your one-on-one sessions. So let's start at Tier 1, our class lessons. Now, how do you find Tier 1 students? Who are you supposed to be seeing in these sessions? And it's simple. It's everybody. And the class lesson length and duration. So I like to go in once a month and for about 30 minutes. And I'm going into each class once a month for 30 minutes. Now, I know some of you guys, and you can let me know in the chat if this is you, Some people are in the specials rotation, and you may have a designated time that you have to go in. So perhaps you have to go in, twice a month. I know some people have to do that. But if you are in charge of scheduling your class lessons, then I totally recommend one time a month. Believe me, that's enough, because by the time you're going into every class, it can already be pretty demanding. And I want to make sure you have time for those groups and individual as well. Lori said once a month for 45 minutes. Okay, yeah. So 45, that's awesome. You get a little more time in there. Some people are twice a month. Yeah. If you have the option, I think once a month is a great place to start. Now, scheduling is the trickiest part of class lessons. And when it comes to scheduling any counseling service, class lessons are the trickiest. So I'm going to show you how to develop a foolproof scheduling system. And let's talk about those things that don't happen if you don't schedule your class lessons in advance. And you might relate to these. Last minute scheduling means you have to work around an already full schedule. You already have meetings and individual sessions and small groups, and then you're trying to squeeze in these class lessons. Impossible. Or maybe you're constantly referring to your calendar. You're walking down the hall and a teacher stops you and they're like, "Hey, when are you coming to my class?" And you're like, "Oh, I don't know. Hold on, let me look." And you're like totally confused. Or 3, you encounter the back and forth email yo-yo. This one's the worst. When you ask a teacher, "Hey, when can I come in?" And then they're like, "Oh, maybe this time." And you're like, "Oh, I can't do that time because of this. I have this." And you suggest another time. They can't do it. That's the yo-yo I'm talking about. So which one can you relate to? Number 1, scheduling headaches. Number 2, hallway stops. Or number 3, the email yo-yo. Tell me which one can you relate to. Patty's 1, 2, and 3. Marissa's 1. Veronica's 1. Hannah's 1. Ashley's all of them. Jessica's 1 and 2. Sarah's 1 and 3. Trinell's 1. Awesome. I'm going to pick somebody here. Let's go with Veronica. You are going to be our Amazon gift card winner for this one. Yay, Veronica. Send me an email, rachel@brightfutures-counseling.com after the call, and I will get your gift card to you. Now, let me tell you a story about me. So flashback 2015, it all started really. I was late to class lessons due to my groups running over. My group would be having like a really great conversation, or we'd be finishing up a game or a craft or something, and then I'd be late to the class lesson. Now, the class lesson teacher didn't know that I was coming from a group, and they didn't really care. They had me on their schedule, and I was unreliable because I didn't know my schedule. And I was constantly in my inbox trying to figure out when to go to what thing. So what did I do? I developed systems. I started streamlining my scheduling system with Calendly. So Calendly, I'll show you in a minute, is a sign-up system that teachers can do with you. This way, it's so much easier to schedule rather than the back and forth email yo-yo. Oh gosh, there's 2 Veronicas. It was the one who put number 1. Sorry. And I set up buffers to prevent late lessons. So I would give myself a little time, not just the travel time, but a little buffer period in case, I was doing some deep work with a group or an individual. And then I stopped drowning in my inbox. You can use tech tools to do the legwork for you. So my personal favorite, like I mentioned, is Calendly, and that's where teachers can book a class lesson time with you based on your availability. So here's what it looks like in action. It's free to set up. They have a paid version, but I only use the free one. It's sufficient. And so you would just say, give this link to teachers. You input your availability ahead of time, so you're already accounting for any, groups or previously scheduled things you have done, and teachers can schedule a time with you. Now, what I recommend is you ask them to book for the rest of the year in advance. So if they pick a Tuesday at 10 o'clock, you say, "Awesome, let's just do this every Tuesday, first Tuesday of the month at 10 o'clock. And then you have to, be prepared to make a few changes. There may be a school break, a holiday, something like that. But for the most part, this is a great way to automate this. I agree, Ashley, much easier than a Google Doc. So you can set up your availability with those buffers in mind. So you don't want to have in there like 10 o'clock this class, 10:30 this class. You want to give yourself like 10 o'clock this class and the next one not till 11. That way you have time if you need to print something, maybe even go to the bathroom. Dare we take a bathroom break? And scheduling our lessons in advance allows everyone to be accountable. I've also been on the flip side of the situation I mentioned earlier, where I show up to a class ready to rock and the teacher's like, "Oh, well, we're in the middle of this thing, sorry." And I'm like, "Seriously? I scheduled this with you forever ago." And then it kind of messes up my day. So it's way better when everyone is on the same page. And Calendly will link with your Google Calendar. They can add it to their calendar of choice. I think even like Apple, Google Outlook, whatever. So everyone has it on their calendar, so there should be no confusion. Yeah, Lori, it happens a lot to you. Yeah, same. This helps you feel prepared because you can rest at ease knowing that all your lessons are scheduled for the entire school year, and you can use that time to help more kiddos. Now let's talk about the session planning. So you're like, all right, I've got them scheduled. We know how long they're supposed to be. What are we doing in the sessions in Tier 1? Well, having an engaging lesson plan keeps students on task, interested, and learning. So what they look like in action. Now I have on the left-hand side, this is some of my students playing a game where they're using a rubber band to kind of move the cups to build a pyramid. And this, it's kind of like a STEM activity as well. But I used it for a cooperation lesson. And then on the right-hand side, that's a picture of one of my escape rooms. I love to do like a meet the counselor style escape room. You can also do, things to get them up and moving, like freeze dance or sides of the room. You can do breakout groups. Anything that's engaging is really good because it's hard to manage behaviors and keep kiddos engaged in those, classes of 25, 30. And digital can be engaging too. So for my digital lovers, I always prefer digital. It's super low prep. You can just show up with your slide deck, but those can still be engaging. So I have some examples here, some screenshots of some lessons I've done. A responsibility role play. So you're listing out some role play scenarios, and then the class breaks up, does their role play, acts it out for the class. Or I statements. This one is great. We were talking about conflict resolution coming up. So I statements is always a good thing to review. So having the kids get into breakout groups and then rehearsing I statements for the following scenarios. You can also show videos and then discuss them. Like I said, sides of the room is a fun one. I like to do sides of the room, for example, with like a bullying or cyberbullying prevention lesson where you're talking about information that's safe versus unsafe to share online. You could do it for like tattling versus reporting, growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Anything where you're trying to decide what something is, they would go to that side of the room. So things to get the kids up and moving. So tell me in the comments, 1, 2, or 3, which engaging lesson would you like to try? Movement-based icebreakers, escape rooms, or digital lessons? Jill wants to try 2. Ashley's 1 and 3. Rachel's 2. Oh, you guys are going fast. I love it. Someone said all. Lori said all. Patty said the escape room. Danielle said all. Veronica said all. I love it. Let's, Nicole, all. Yes, awesome. I want you guys to try all of these. The escape rooms are super fun. And this helps you feel confident because knowing that you have a class lesson that will keep students engaged while simultaneously preventing unwanted behaviors will make you feel like you actually have teaching experience. And the kids can sense this confidence and then they'll respond accordingly. So here's a little sneak peek when it comes to classroom lesson planning. So I like to follow this structure. First, an introduction. So you're saying like, hey, this is what we're going to talk about today, growth mindset. Then a fun icebreaker. So you do like a beach ball toss or something. Then some kind of whole class discussion or activity. Then a small group activity. So letting them get into those breakout groups of like, role play or practicing something, or solving a puzzle or mission, and then come back together for some kind of written reflection. And outlines are your friends. So you can kind of see a sneak peek of an outline that I like to use here. And then outlines are helpful because you can kind of time yourself like a lot. If you have 30 minutes, you can break it up. Okay, I'm going to allow 18 minutes for this game. That's the biggest part of the lesson. Only 5 minutes for the reflection, and then a 2-minute, check in, check out data collection at the end. So I encourage you to make some outlines or use ones that you have. Okay, so that's all about class lessons. Hope you guys are feeling better about that and how you can deliver those more effectively. Now let's move on to Tier 2 and 3, groups and individual. Now these have some overlap, so I'm doing them together. And the first thing is, how do you find your Tier 2 and Tier 3 students? Well, it can be referral based. So get referral forms, put them all over the school, have QR codes on your office door, send out links on your school website, have paper copies in the staff lounge, in the front office with all the teachers, wherever. Let parents, teachers, and students know that they can refer to counseling. But be mindful, that you always know what's best in referrals. So if they're saying like, you'll get a lot of parents push for individual, but a lot of times it's better to start with that tier 2 group and then assess if the child needs individual. And you can find tier 2 and 3 students through previous counseling, which I'll show you a little more about that in a bit. So here's an example of a referral form. Like I said, I like to do digital and print ones, make them accessible and easy to use. You're going to ask, basic contact info, name, teacher, grade level. Then you want to ask the area of need, why the referrer thinks they need counseling, and then the severity level. So is this like a huge deal, a little deal, whatever. And like I said, besides referrals, you can also get students for your groups and individual from previous counseling. So it's kind of like a ladder here where you're determining next steps for students. So if they're in a small group, but we notice based on data that they're, needing more support, we could move them to individual sessions. And then if they're in individual sessions, but we notice they're improving, but they're still not quite ready just to go back to the whole class lesson, we can move them down to small groups. Or if they're in individual and we notice that they need even more support than we can offer at the school level, we can move them up to an outside referral. But we always want to be making some data-driven decisions. Now, the small group size. So I recommend 4 to 6 students. Believe me, I've had like 8 kindergarten boys in a self-control group, and it was terrible. So, it was crazy. It was fun, but it was not productive. So I recommend keeping it smaller. And you can even do 2, a pair of 2. I've done that before. But you want to consider the topic and the age and the activities. A lot of times I'll see counselors just say like, oh, we're just having like lunch bunch, and there's no theme. So I think it's much better to look at the referral data to see the areas of need and then try to group them as specifically as possible. Like, oh, these students are new students, not just friendship. They're specifically new students to our school. So we're going to do that kind of group. Or these students are specifically conflict resolution, not just general friendship group. Also, age level, you don't want to put a kinder with a 5th grader. That's not going to be successful, things like that. And you want to keep in mind your own behavior management skills when it comes to selecting the group sizes. Like I said, it can get kind of out of hand. Now, length and duration, I recommend 6 to 8 weeks. This is enough time to learn and practice the new skills, but you want to prevent codependency. We don't want to see kids all year long. We want to let them know that this is a group. We have our objectives. We're going to measure them using data, and then we're either going to move up or down a tier, kind of like that ladder that I was showing you, to determine their next steps. And I recommend a duration of 30 minutes, same as my class lessons. I just always like to use 30 minutes for things like this. But the time determines the activity type. So keep in mind, don't break out some elaborate craft if you only have 20 minutes or something like that. Avoid crafts if it is a lunch bunch, because the kids have to go get their lunch. They have to eat their lunch. So those like discussion-based things are usually better for lunch bunch. Keep in mind the travel time. I know if you're working with the littles, sometimes you have to go pick them up at their classroom. And you can get more done with individuals. So 30 minutes with an individual, you can get a lot more done than 30 minutes with a group. Just something to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to scheduling your groups and your individual, here are some steps. First, gather those referrals like I talked about. Second, send home permission slips. So you want to get parent permission. Third, ask teachers their ideal time. And I want you to consider your best time too. So if you don't want to do groups on Monday morning or Friday afternoon, just don't make that an available time. Save that time for, some kind of admin task you have to do. But yeah, ask teachers their ideal time, and then you'll have to kind of collaborate with the different teachers to figure out the best time. And then you will finally schedule it. And keep in mind, groups are trickier because, like I said, if you have 5 kids in a group, this is something to consider with group size as well. That's 5 different teachers you're having to coordinate with. So smaller groups, and if they're similar grade levels, they likely have the same schedule. So it's a little easier. Like I said, grouping by the same grade level, even the same teachers, even easier if you have multiple referrals from the same teacher. And you want to kind of keep personalities in mind as well, so the group's successful. I personally don't like to do a lunch bunch. Like I said, it's the food and they have to go get the food. It just is hard to get as much done. But I understand if that's the only time you have. I know non-instructional time, like a lunch bunch or a recess, the pro is you don't have to coordinate with teachers as much. But the con is that they're missing their lunch or they're missing their recess, which we don't want them to view counseling as like, oh, I got to go to counseling. I'm going to miss recess. We don't want to take away their fun parts. So I like to remind teachers that, yes, we're taking them out of math once a week for 30 minutes, but they're going to learn a skill that, they first need to have their social emotional skills in place before they're able to do that higher level thinking. And session planning for tier 2 and 3. If it's a group, I like to start with some group rules, some ground rules you can establish together. But for group and individual, I love to do a feelings check, then moving into an icebreaker activity, just to kind of get to know each other, build a rapport. That's a must do in session 1, but I like to do a small one in every session. Then introduce the concept. Oh, today we're going to be talking about whatever. The main activity. So this would be like, maybe you're doing a cut and paste. Maybe you're doing a game. Maybe you're doing a craft. Maybe you're watching a video and discussing. And then a journal reflection piece. And again, I'm a big proponent of outlines. They can save you so much time on the back end and keep you hyper organized. So you can write outlines and then fill in those objectives and even align them to ASCA standards. Here's an example of some group rules. You want to explain and remind them each week, especially confidentiality, what we say in here stays in here. And you can have the students help create them, which is really fun. The feelings check, I love to use a visual aid and model for the students every time, I'm feeling sad because this, or I'm feeling happy because of this. And if they're having a hard time identifying their feelings, they can always use a scale of 1 to 10. If you're doing zones of regulation, they could identify a color. You can get creative with it depending on your kiddos. Here are some icebreakers that I like to do. Sides of the room, like I mentioned before, get to know you Jenga or bingo, beach ball discussions. Oh, Ashley said a high and a low. Yeah, that's a good one. Introducing the concept. So using a poster or video or like a mini lesson to introduce each week's concept. Then the main activity. This is what's going to reinforce the concepts, and students learn best when they're engaged. So don't forget that. We want to keep these hands-on and fun, and you want it to be fun for you too. You don't want to get bored of doing the same thing over again. So there's an example of a cut and paste. You can do more role play, more crafts. Interactive notebooks are great for groups and individual board games. Here's some more ideas. Sorting activities, flip books. There's tons. I could do a whole training, and I have specifically about activities to do in these types of sessions. So I'm just giving you guys some ideas so you know what to actually deliver. And you always want to do that journal and offer the students an opportunity for self-reflection. So remember, these can be like open-ended or fill in the blank, and you want to allow like a big chunk of time, like 7 minutes or so, to do the journal. And a lot of times I know journals get pushed to the wayside, they get neglected. So you could even journal at the beginning of your session, which is kind of something unique that my friend was telling me about. Okay, we're going to do another gift card giveaway. 1, 2, or 3. Which part of tier 1 and 2 counseling, so groups and individual, which part is most challenging for you? Number 1, gathering referrals. Number 2, scheduling the students. Or number 3, planning sessions. Hannah said gathering referrals and planning sessions. Audrey said 2, scheduling. Savannah said all of the above. Mostly 2 for Nicole. Julie, 2 and 3. Bianca, 3. Lori, 2 and 3. Baber, 3. Awesome, awesome. We're going to give this one to Savannah. Congrats. You got our gift card giveaway. Send me an email after the call. I think Grant put it in the chat, but Rachel at brightfutures-counseling.com, and I'll get you your gift card. Now let's move on. So we're talking, that was a lot. That was like our biggest amount of stuff to get through, but I really wanted to show you guys how to find the students, how to schedule the students, and what you should be doing with the students at each tier. Because I know, and I thought I was spot on with making the training, but I wasn't sure. But you proved me right at the beginning when you said that this is one of your hardest things, is finding the time to see the students at all 3 tiers. So I hope those scheduling tips were helpful for you.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.